All right, everybody. SandDAO Podcast, episode 9. I have with me today Arthemort. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah, I'm not sure myself how you're supposed to pronounce it. So, but you can call me Brian if that's more convenient.
Bryan. Sure, Bryan.
Yeah.
Well, I have with me today Bryan, also known as Arthemort. So if you're on the DAO forums, you'll see him under that name with the picture of the guy in the hat and the suit and the apple over his face, which I want to ask you about when we get to the introductions. But today we're going to be talking about his SIP that is currently in the DAO forums under SIP drafts. So as you can see in my thumbnail over here to the right, under proposals, SIP draft, you'll see mandate for DAO Collection Management. That's the SIP we'll be talking about today, which is currently going under the 14-day community comment period before it goes to vote for 14 days. And yeah, welcome. So the scope of the talk today is a meet and greet, and it's about the SIP draft. So those are the two things that we're going to hit today. Who is the author, and what is the SIP about? Introductions. My name's Lanzer. I am the podcast host for SandDAO Podcast. I've been an avatar landowner and in Sandbox since mid-season 1, and program management background, contract negotiation background. I got a question yesterday from who was it that sent me that question yesterday? Why am I part of the Sandbox team? I am not. I'm an independent person. I do this because I love the sandbox. I believe in the DAO's vision, and I want to help make it successful as a SandFam member. So that's me. And Bryan, please introduce.
Myself? Yeah, so there's a bit of a bio of mine in the SIP, but it's quite long. But to be short, I have been involved in anything related to blockchain and art for the past 7 or 8 years now. Pretty much as soon as I graduated from high school. Worked a bit at Sotheby's. I was in charge of NFTs there. Once I was done with my master degree in art business. Also have a bunch of like certification in collection management and other related degrees. And since I've left Sotheby's last September, uh, I've sort of went back to what I was doing before that, which is organizing exhibition myself. And that's my mom behind. Maman, je suis en call. Merci. C'est gentil. Oui, non, mais tu peux partir, s'il te plaît? Okay. Sorry for that.
That's okay. I can blur that out on video if you prefer her not to be on video.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no
And
problem.
yeah, and so I've been doing this and that, doing exhibition in fairs and Web3 event, had art fairs, representing artists. And I also have a startup called Art Crush, and we're doing digital exhibition on public display exhibition on billboard across the world, in 27 or so countries, for the last 2 years. Well,
Okay, got it. And so I assume you're from France?
yeah, yeah. As the accent can give it away.
Yeah. Well, definitely speaking French gave it away. Well, cool, cool. And so you've been in the Web3 blockchain industry, you said, since high school.
Yeah, since 2016, 17, pretty much. I mean, it was specifically the blockchain and art industry, which was anything about the blockchain application for traceability, provenance research, and authentication of artwork. Before NFT existed, there was already a bunch of people that were interested about how to apply blockchain system to the art world. And we bunch of startup company existed in that regard. To name a few, there was like Codex Protocol, Masenas, Verisart. A bunch of those do not exist anymore. And yeah, back then it was all about sort of providing a solution to counterfeiters, and to apply blockchain system to real world assets, specifically artwork.
Got it. Got it. Wow. Okay. So you sounds like you do have quite an expertise in this realm. Cool. I
Well,
definitely.
we were not many to get interested by that topic back then. We were perhaps a dozen in the world, if I remember.
Hmm.
People like Jason Bailey, George Bach, Kevin Abosch, Art Gnome. There's also Benoit Couty and a bunch of people like that, but it was a very small circle of scholars and researchers that was interested by that, really. Yeah, I remember, for example, when Super R launched and stuff like that, that was really a moment where we saw a shift to digital. But before that, it was really about physical art.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate learning about you. So, disclaimer:
It was
Bryan and I do not represent the Sandbox Game or the Sandbox Foundation. We are not your legal or financial advisors, and nothing we say is to be taken as legal and financial advice. The DAO Scoreboard. So we currently have one SIP in draft on the forums. That's the one we're talking about today. The mandate for DAO Collection, talking about the NFT collection that Bryan here, otherwise known as Arthemort, would is currently under community review. We have 8 SIPs closed in total. 7 of them were approved. The latest being SIP-7 being the staking budget, and one of them not being approved, which was SIP-8, which was the Paris City Jam from France. Arthemort from France. So the reason why that one didn't pass is because it didn't reach quorum. So it had an overwhelming yes vote. It just didn't reach that 30 million quorum. It only reached about 60% or 16 million. One was archived, so the creator first. That was, I believe, podcast 3 or 4 with Kirill. That one was archived with no vote. I'm still reaching out to him to figure out what happened there. And for Meta Worlds, we submitted our 6th SIP, or it would be our 5th SIP, which was the funding of this SandDAO podcast to the community. So it should be right behind you, Arthmort, your mandate for DAO collection, and then that'll go to community vote just like everything else. But that brings us to now, with 7 SIPs passed, 13% of the budget has been expensed. 13%. And I will need to insert a line for yours, Arthmort. So if it were to pass, how much would that ask on the budget as well? And which category were you going for here? Your budget?
I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. I guess it's the NFT side of things.
The NFT
I'm not
side?
fully,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, I'm not fully aware of the sort of repartition of however how the budget of that works. Uh, Most of the project around the collection is meant to be self-funded through the sales of most NFTs in the existing collection. The only thing that is, I guess, to take it out from the budget is the remuneration I'm asking and Grida is asking for this mission,
Okay, got it.
and also the cost of organizing the exhibition that comes with it. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, we'll get into the price as well, and then I think we'll probably know which budget it's coming out of after that. Okay,
Mm.
Bryan, let's get right into the discussion. So, number 1. What inspired the title Mandate for DAO Collection Management? What's behind that?
I guess it might be a very French wording, but I like the word mandate because it's when I was asked for the job, when I was like scooted out for the job, I first didn't really realize that would have to, submit the SIP and have to go through the vote, etc. And so to me, I'm asking for a mandate, so just like anyone you would elect in, any democratic process, people in a representative democracy, people have a mandate to give them their trust, and you trust them enough to be able to put their program in use, right? Why did I put that? Because in my risk analysis, the main risk I always had to face when dealing with management of collection was whenever a collectors or foundation or institution would ask me to manage the collection, they would say, well, you have this much budget for this much time, right? And sometimes some clients, they have issue, personal issue that make it so that they need liquidity and they want to back it up, and they want to go out from that mandate. And so often it's the main problem is that because of that you cannot go through your strategy fully, And so when I ask for a mandate, is that I ask people to trust me, whatever my strategy, and not to be like, oh, let's vote for impeaching whoever is in charge at some point. So the notion of mandate is the fact that I'm asking people to elect me to direct the collection for a bit with the strategy that I'm proposing. And that if they're not happy with what I'm doing after my mandate is done, they can elect someone else. They can re-elect me if they are happy with it. But I ask them to sort of trust me throughout the process uh, until we reach the deadline that is decided by Sandbox, which is every 1st of January or 31 of December, pretty much.
Okay, got it.
And yeah, voilà, that's the term mandate is because of that. I guess that's the one that sort of ticked with you. And collection management is because that's what the mission is about. And I will be able to describe a bit more what the job of a collection manager is. It's described within the SIP, but I know that most people, I guess, not familiar with the type of profile and just job situation, which I'm totally aware of.
Yeah, yeah. Let's get right into that. So, how did all this come about? Where did it start?
Well, it started through Jean-Michel Pailhon, which I believe is a member of your council or advisor board, something like that. Is someone that I've been familiar with a few years now. Is in charge of Grey Capital, and what happened is I guess he knows personally Sébastien Borget and the other founder of Sandbox. Is someone that truly believe in the his thesis is that digital art is going to be a $1 trillion worth asset within 10 years. And for that, he built a company called Grey Capital, where he proposed structured funds around our digital art investments, especially NFTs and in Web3. And so I guess it was last show we did during NFT Paris. We met him again in NFC at Lisbon at the Arab Bank, and I know a bunch of people from Sandbox were there. What he did is they sort of went through the collection that exists within the wallet that is shared within the SIP, realizing that a large part of that collection was established within 2021 and 2022, where the main market focus was PFP collectibles. So 10K avatar collection, pretty much. And just realized that it's not really diversified, it's heavily reliant on that specific market category at 95 98%. And therefore it seems he wanted to propose that we diversify the collection to a more art-centric point of view. I guess he couldn't do it himself because he's a very busy guy, and he was looking for people that have experience in that field. So he reached out to me. I had a call with Cyril, that is in charge of the things that are related to DAO
The
at
DAO
Sandbox.
administrator.
Is the DAO administrator, okay? I wasn't sure of his title. So we had a call, explain me, the situation, the project that, most of the wallet that is at the moment in custody of Sébastien Borget and his co-founder will be transferred to the DAO. And yeah, they thought, anything when you have that much of assets locked, it's important to manage it with flexibility and actively. And yeah, and so they just say that it's too heavily reliant on collectibles, and that it might be worth as a mid-term, long-term strategy to slowly liquidate part of this collection and acquire, uh, other category of the NFT market, namely the art side of that, which I specialize in, because we just believe that it's a more resilient market, and it's more in tune with the ideals of Sandbox and the mission that it's trying to pursue with this DAO. And yeah, so that's all it came about. It was honestly that went very fast because they reached out to me not even a month ago. So I did this SIP in a week, and we submitted through the draft right on.
So you reached out a month ago. Okay. And are
Yeah,
you when did you have the call with Cyril?
yeah, about a month ago, 2 weeks
Okay.
ago, perhaps a month ago. So I had to do that. They said quite fast, honestly. Went through the template they had. learn a bit about
Gotcha.
the process, and try to sort of price things out and do all
Okay.
the primary work that is needed.
And are you an employee of Jean-Michel, or are you a partner or a freelancer? What's your
No, I'm not. I'm
relationship?
not work. I don't work with Jean-Michel. Jean-Michel is one of my clients.
Okay.
He has bought artwork in my exhibition before, usually through the Arab Bank of Switzerland, which is the curator of. And so in my last exhibition, he did bought a work. But he was a founder of one of the founder of Ledger. So I know him from the space around for quite a while now. From far away, and then we became a bit more close, but it's always been like a very friendly relationship, I'd say. And I don't really work with him whatsoever. Yeah, I usually
Okay.
he's super nice to come to my exhibition, support the artist I'm trying to support as well. And yeah, sometimes he did sponsor a show of friends of mine that I've introduced him to, but that's about it.
Okay, so he's a client, and you mentioned exhibitions, which is also mentioned in your SIP. When you say offline exhibitions in your SIP, is that what you're referring to? Is the exhibitions you're doing now?
So offline or ERL exhibition is what I've been doing for the last few years. It's about organizing ERL shows with a scenographic element, writing text. There's a lot that goes into making an exhibition, but yeah, that's usually what I do. The last one I did personally was during NFT Paris, where I had a booth there. So when you set up a booth and present an artist, that's an exhibition. But they it can take many forms. But yeah, that's one of the
Okay.
things I think would be nice to have for to showcase at least the acquisition we'll be making for this DAO.
And you said you've been doing it the exhibitions for how many years? 2 or 3?
Yeah, about that, I was not done with a master quite yet. My first exhibition, which I guess was one of the first exhibition of NFTs in Europe, was in February 2021 at an art fair called the Menart, which I presented artists that was mostly refugees, and the topic was saying how Web3 was a tool for emancipation, and how the ideals of the blockchain fits, especially the political situation of country like Lebanon, Syria, Turkey,
Wow, okay.
Iran, for example. So yeah, that was my first exhibition that I did organize on my own. But before that, I worked in art galleries, auction houses. So I did had to deal with organizing exhibition before that, but I was an intern, so and I wasn't the one taking the financial risk, so it's a bit of a different gig.
Got it, got it. Huh. And going back to what
I
you
think I
were
lost you there, Lanzer.
hello?
Is it me?
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay? I can hear me. We can hear you. Can you hear each other? Say something, Brian?
Ah, yes, you're back. Okay. Yeah, you
Oh, okay.
froze for a minute. I'm sorry.
Okay, got it, got it. No problem. So going back to where all this began with Jean-Michel, how did he originally propose the SIP to you?
You just how did he do that? I think it was in the context of us going to the vernissage of an exhibition at Adverse Gallery. I guess we went out for dinner and he told me that, he was working on setting up the DAO. I think he had a pretty big impact on setting up this DAO throughout, to pitch it to the founders of Sandbox. And just, his job is to also invest in digital art and manage collection in a way. So I guess he just, knew there was this coming up and needed someone to deal with it. So it was
Okay.
quite, how do you call that, informal in many regard at first.
And this was a little over a month ago at NFC Lisbon.
No, NFC Lisbon was many months ago.
Oh,
No, that was, yeah, NFC Lisbon was in May, I think. Um, April. No, it was just, I think it was because of the opening of the Artverse Gallery that recently opened, which is a gallery that is owned by Sébastien Banger.
And this was about a little over a month ago.
Yeah, about
Okay,
that. Yeah, I think
got it.
it might be just 4 weeks ago or something. What I mean by that is just that it's been quite a recent project.
Yeah, I got it. Okay, and you mentioned that the DAO has assets. I didn't know the DAO had any assets. When did this transfer happen? And I saw that there's
It's
14,000 assets in your SIP proposal.
yeah, I don't think they have it per se already, but it's very much in plan to have this collection that we're talking about here being transferred into the custody or like at least I guess the jurisdiction of the DAO. But yeah, people are not aware of it because it's not a corporate collection of the Sandbox, it's a personal collection of the Sandbox founders.
Oh,
So this is, I guess, I don't know how that goes on in the budget or the valuation of the DAO itself. But usually a lot of DAOs are built around a common treasury, and often our DAOs are built around a common collection. So I guess that just if you guys were not aware of it, that's good news in any ways
no,
because
had
we're
no
gonna,
idea.
yeah. So, and I think that was very much into an idea that from Jean-Michel, he's the best one to respond for himself. So I cannot really tell from what's going on to those upper echelon. But yeah, as far as I'm concerned, those wallets and assets within those wallets will be transferred into the custody of the DAO itself. And even if my SIP does not go through, I guess this will still happen. I hope at least. And then, I guess you guys will be able to decide whatever to do with it. If you want to liquidate it,
Okay.
totally. I mean, up to
All
you.
right then. I'm really glad we had this conversation, Brian, because I did not know that. I'm quite sure most of the DAO SandFam did not know that either.
Don't take my word for it. Just that I've been very much informal about it, and all I know is that they need someone to manage it, and they wanted to go through the DAO system to manage that. If it will be transferred, if that SIP doesn't go through, I'm honestly unaware of. I guess
Okay.
that would be a good question to ask, but I'm not the best place to answer this specific
Yeah.
question.
No
All
problem.
I
No
know is
problem.
that if I were to manage it, it will obviously be under the custody of the DAO at this point.
Got it. Okay. Cool. So that I think that pretty well establishes how this all came to be. That's good. That makes sense. So, what is this SIP wanting to accomplish? I think from what I understand, you're proposing that the DAO management, or excuse me, the management of those assets after they're transferred to the DAO. Did anyone say when this was going to happen? Has it already happened? The
I
transfer?
don't think that I don't think it has already happened. I've sort of suggested to them what the operational system should be, because obviously, a lot of those assets are not meant to be sold. I believe, like a large part of those assets are like sandbox land, sandbox assets. So, we're not gonna sell those, obviously. So I think we're gonna make, I think it's written in the SIP, one wallet for as a vault, which anything we're not gonna sell anymore, we're gonna put there. One wallet as, an operational wallet for selling and buying. And a large part of those assets are honestly not even worth the gas, and so will be liquidated from those wallets originally. And when that will be done, the funds will be transferred to the second wallet that I've mentioned.
Okay. Okay. So
Ah, you
run us
froze
through
again,
a
my
summary of.
Lanzer. Let
Oh,
me just try
did
to
you run?
refresh
Did you lose me
that.
again? Am I frozen?
Sorry, that must be my connection. I've moved room recently and
Oh, okay.
I'm not
He's
quite set up.
he's lost connection a bit. So while he's waiting to get back, okay, that makes a lot more sense. I'm glad that he explained that background. And I'll send him a quick message.
Ah, you're back.
I'm back. Okay, cool. Yeah, no problem. No problem. Just continue to say when it's frozen because while you're doing that, I can just recount with the audience what's been happening and then when yeah. No, we're good. We'll go right through this. That's no problem. So, walk me through this SIP is about your nomination to manage that, not that the transfer will happen, because the transfer is going to happen regardless. This is about your nomination to manage it. We?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, that's correct. Because building up a collection is just job. Most people don't know of it. Of course, being an art collector is not a job, but being a collection manager is very much is. What is the difference between a collection manager and an art collector? First is whose is money is buying the things that is actually entering the collection for once, but also the fact that building up a collection with a thesis, with an angle, with an objective is something that takes time. And collectors that I've worked with, in both physical art or digital art, they have collection that has so many assets that they can barely track anymore and barely realize what is valuable, or what is even worth keeping, or where is the direction this collection is going to. And then when things get big, you have a lot of administrative stuff to do. So for physical art, it's about insurances, transportation, knowing where is where, what is where, etc. Because funnily enough, it's quite easy to lose track of an artwork when you move it around in different locations and stuff like that. And also just manage things like museum lending. All that takes a lot of time that most collectors that usually are successful business entrepreneur don't really have time to focus on. So they delegate that to a collection manager, right? Uh, and yeah, it's all about being, I guess, a bit decisive about what we're doing with those assets. um, you couldn't very much, leave it as it is, and cross fingers. Hopefully, in the next few years, it will be worth more than it actually is. But my hunch is that, is it really meaningful for the Sandbox DAO to own a bunch of PFP 10K avatar collectibles? I don't really think so. I think it's much more interesting to limit the number of assets within the collection, refocus the collection toward a more art-centric system, support, independent artists, just like, Sandbox is trying to provide a platform to independent creator, and use that as, at some point, a leverage to, recognizability of the Sandbox as, sort of a corporate collection, and just I guess it's a matter of also trying to support, yeah, the ecosystem of Sandbox, but also use it as almost like a lobbyist system at some point. Entering a big collection is really important, and I've put within the SIP a phrase that I think define it all, is that the whole should be greater than the sum of its parts. At the moment, the value of the collection that is in the Sandbox, it's just the sum of its parts. So it's this Bored Ape plus this whatever thing equal that much value, right? When you're a big collectors, or a big institutional collection, the fact that you collect some of the things provide what we call provenance. And if you have the same two edition of the same artwork, and one was owned by a very recognized collectors and one was owned by a nobody, chances that if you're selling it at auction, the first one is going to be at a much higher estimate than the second one because it has a much more interesting provenance. And so setting up an angle for the collection will actually be able to leverage that provenance system, and saying that, well, we have curated collection by a professional that is meaningful, that is culturally relevant, that in support emerging artists, but also can be recognized as a pretty cool and good art collection. And so whoever join his collection will benefit from this aura, just like it happened with Cosimo de Medici. Whenever an artist is bought by this guy, suddenly you have a surge of secondary sales. You have a bunch of primary sales happening to the artist. And that happens solely because this guy is actually building an art collection, not a sum of, collectibles asset that at one point were very sought after, and that nowadays not many people really regard as interesting as it was 2 years ago. Art is much more resilient to time. And so I think, when you have a collection that is estimated at a few million euros at the very least, difficult to put a real time estimate on it as such, but it's at very least a few or couple of million of euros. I think it will be important to use those funds and this capacity to support the space, to support living artists, rather than big 10K projects that don't really have an impact much anymore, to be honest.
Okay, pause for a second. All right, so the TSB's art collection is worth a couple million euros, is what you just said. Okay.
About that, yeah, it's difficult to put a real-time estimate, but the last time the estimate was done, I don't have the number of figures in ETH, but it was somewhere around 3 million euros.
Okay. And you mentioned something really interesting. I want to go back and understand it. First, the word provenance. So I looked that up. So the provenance means the origin of something.
Hmm.
Okay. And when you said the value of TSB's collection is the sum of its parts, were you saying that that's not a good thing and you wanted to change it to what you believed before, which was what?
Yeah, the whole must be greater than the sum of all its parts. That's an expression. I don't know which. I think it's a philosopher that used that a few
Yep,
centuries
yep. I
ago.
recognize that, but
Uh,
connect it to what you were saying.
Yeah. So if you have a few artworks together that doesn't have anything to do with each other, then the value of this collection is just the sum of this artwork. But if you're putting some efforts in curating something, in putting some red lines, some red threads, something that connects everything together, that suddenly this ensemble is becoming something else, is becoming something greater, something of an higher value. And this provenance, so that is the effect of provenance. That's the added value of the work that I'm doing as a curator or as a collection manager, is is to say that yeah, this collection can have an angle, can have a mission, can have a thesis, an idea, an objective, and as things integrate within this idea and make it bigger and bigger and greater, this has a beneficial externality effects throughout all those artwork. So suddenly, if you're buying an artist or if you're, have an edition, the fact that it's the edition from this specific collection has some added value, and this is what we call provenance. And provenance, oh yeah, it's the source of where things are, but it's a term that is used more broadly in the art world to say what is the how do you call that, like the pedigree of something, just like when you're buying a dog, for example, in dog breeding, if this dog is the son of whichever champion of duty contest, etc., this add to his pedigree, right? You're going to buy this dog.
Lineage.
Lineage, yeah, pedigree, lineage.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm using a bunch of
It's
words here
okay.
and
It's
there.
okay. I know very little about the Arth world, so
Mhm.
I'm learning here. So provenance is a word, and it talks about lineage, like aura and ancestry, and that's what gives it value is its history and its connection
Mhm.
to lineage.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. And sometimes a more broader example is when celebrities own some artwork. The fact that the celebrity owned that specific artwork is going to add added value. There was a few years ago, there was a big auction from the Yves Saint Laurent collection, for example. And most of the works within that collection went from a much higher market price than they would usually go for, just because it was owned at some point by Yves Saint Laurent, displaying in his home, etc. So this had participates to the value of the artwork, the fact that you're owning it. This person has owned it at some point. And this can be true for corporate collections. So I've used, I think, the Pernod Ricard example in the SIP. The Pernod Ricard Foundation, which is a brand that's doing Ricard, which is a very specific French alcohol. The Pernod Ricard Foundation, south of France, there's a lot of foundations, south of France, Art Foundation. There's l'École de Nice also, that was a major center of art history in France. They made what we call the Prix Marcel Duchamp. And the Prix Marcel Duchamp is now become, after years, a very important distinction for an artist that can very much have a huge impact on an artist's career in contemporary art. And it's a prize that is discerned by a corporate business, that has nothing to do with the art world, aside from the fact that they built up throughout the years a very important collection of French contemporary art, but also pop art from many various artists. I think they have some of the biggest collection of Warhols in corporate art collection, but that's just one example from other
And
artists.
what's the name of the people you're describing right now who has this collection?
So it's a business called the Pernod Ricard. Pernod Ricard is it's a booze business in France, and this
Bryan,
said
I
so this
think
is
I'm
not a
learning
corporate collection.
French as we're speaking, so go right ahead.
Yeah, Pernod Ricard, it's a French brand, so it's gonna sound weird, but Marcel Duchamp is one of the most famous French artists. Is the guy that invented the concept of ready-made, which is this artwork with the urinal, with the toilet put upside down. It was the
Uh-huh.
first time that an artist decided that anything an artist decide that can be art is art as long as he signed it. Bref, that's a little course of, but that's usually that marks the switch from modern art to contemporary art in the 1960s, 70s. And so they made a prize with the name of this artist. What I meant to say is that this business that has nothing to do with art, it's a booze business. They set up a collection throughout the years that enabled them to gain some sort of cultural importance that now they can get the benefit of through the fact that they have a huge leverage to have an impact on artists' career. But that just I've put in the SIP. There is a list, an article with almost 40 or 50 corporate art collection. It's not random that business own collection of art. A lot of it sometimes has to do with fiscal benefits, but not only. It's just like why our business supporting athletes at the Olympics. You don't really have their logos on the thing, so it's not about visibility. It's about something else, about supporting sports, the development of sport and culture, and also just supporting individual that they believe in. So yeah, as of why should the business own a collection, there's a bit of that in the SIP, but it has proven useful throughout history.
Okay, so this is awesome. I was not expecting you you clearly have been in this for a while, so let's keep on going. So this SIP is about your nomination, and if I understand you correctly, you want to refocus the the future DAO's collection to to have provenance.
Yes, I wanted to make it a real art collection, so the fact that it's something is bought by the Sandbox DAO would have a big impact. Just like
Okay.
at the moment, it is the same thing with Flamingo DAO and a few other art DAO. Whenever those DAOs support or incubate artists, for example, the fact that they have a collection to back it up is something that participate to the legitimacy, that participate to the impact they can have in the space. And I think, one of the greatest thing that happened to Web3 was this huge wave of artists coming in and creative people coming in that was, largely missing before that. And yeah, which is like just like in the manifesto, I think it says that it's important to recognize the impact those people have, and Sandbox is adhere to creative project, right? Which a lot of artists are involved with. So it just seems more logical to support artists than it is to support PFP projects that are more close to a business than they are independent artists running it, right?
Okay.
Um, so yeah, that's mostly that. But for example, it can be also thematical things that are linked with the sandbox. You can we can decide that for 1 quarter we're gonna mostly collect voxel artists, for example, artists that are working with voxel, because we think that's a match with the visual identity of the sandbox. And there's been many great voxel architect that has produced artwork that are very interesting to look at. Mad Maraka, for example, Marika is an amazing voxel artist. There's a bunch of French voxel artists that I know of as well that worked on like Game of Thrones and stuff like that. I don't have all their name by heart, but what I mean is that we can find thematic that match with what the sandbox is doing. Can be also interactive art, for example, which is a very unregarded, specific field of the art world that is still quite, under the radar at some point. Can be other things like generative art as well when it makes sense toward, I guess thematically and aesthetically toward what we are building at the sandbox in general. So it can be thematical, but what I meant to say is that when you have a collection that is managed and when there is at least a bit of thought process toward a collection thesis toward a rational, it makes this collection just more relevant. And throughout the years, when something is relevant, it become more valuable. And I cannot say about the valuation of it. Like as this what I've been saying to the Sandbox team is that I'm not offering financial advisory. I'm not, I'm not I'm not under in France to do financial advisory, you need to be signed up at the IMF, which is the Autorité des marchés financiers, which I'm not referred to. And that's what I say. I don't offer financial advisory. All I offer is artistical advisory. And, better artists usually lead to better valuation of the collection, but I cannot make promises saying that under my mandate, this collection will suddenly be 10 times more valuable as it is. It will be certainly more diversified, more culturally relevant, more art centric and art focused, and hopefully more valuable at some point. But I cannot make promises on that because
Sure.
whoever tell you you're gonna make a return on buying this artwork is lying. There's, I've made my thesis for my master degree was about art funds, and I've made a comparative study of art funds throughout the last 100 of years to the stock market at the same period. The first art fund was, founded in 1910, I believe, mostly focusing on, artists like the Impressionists. So you would think they have performed very well, right? They did a bunch of really great things that make a great return, but the large majority of it were artists that didn't really make it through history, right? And so the conclusion of my thesis was that the stock markets always outperform art funds over the same period. So art is about investments. If you think about art as an investment, is inherently a bad investment because there's many other investment form where you would have guarantees if it reach a certain level under like the 30%, where you would have, at least some time horizon. And there's been a bunch of, fractionalized art stuff, masterwork.io that offer you to buy $1 share of Rothko's artwork or, big artists like that usually are not competitive if you compare it to other investment vessel because they offer much less visibility. You rarely know how much time it's going to take to make a return on the artwork, if it's going to take 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. There is the cut of the auction house. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. But to say it is that the benefit of owning an art collection is not entirely financial. It can be financial at some points for a portion of it, but it's about also the benefit that it brings you socially and culturally. And I often cite a sociologue, French sociologue called Jean-Jacques Bourdieu, that explained the concept of financial, social, and cultural capital, which is very important and gives you an idea as of why on the top 10 of the billionaires in France, you have one guy that owns a museum, the other guy is on Christie's, the third guy is on Sotheby's. All of that is both Christie's and Sotheby's is owned by French guy, French billionaire. And it's because in France we do have an incentive on social and cultural capital. In the US, you're rich, you make it, right? You're respected because you made it in life. You're a billionaire, and people respect that. In France, if you're a billionaire but you're selling potatoes and you don't know anything about history, people not going to respect you because you made millions selling potatoes. They want you this notion of acceptation in social circle that is sometimes a bit gatekeeped. But this notion is just that, yeah, to be successful is not just about the financial side of things. There is the notion of cultural capital and social capital as well that are important. And this is true for corporate as well. That's what I'm going back to it. That's why corporations support athletes at the Olympic Games. That's why they're building up art collection. It's not because it's the best investment. They could have much better investment with that money. It's an investment in first the image and also the fact that they believe this will have, sort of great externality at some point and other opportunity that they wouldn't have otherwise benefit from their employees or whichever, but it's just that I always say, and I'm being very transparent about the fact that I cannot say to the DAO that under my mandate, suddenly the collection is going to be much more valuable. I cannot say that. What I can say is that it's going to be much better collection art-wise. But as an investment, it's not the best investment to be honest. But at the moment, we have assets existing, and I think it's important to do have a collection within a DAO because most of the DAO that I've seen succeed often are using art collection as a leverage for the communication, but for the support also to small creators. And I think it could be a great onboarding tool. to the sandbox in general, to bring more creative people to build on the sandbox, to have great artists participate, great mind, and just be able to support them.
Okay. All
Sorry, that was a bit of
right.
a
No, that's okay.
TLL
That's okay. That's
there.
good. I'm taking it in. I think we should probably talk about this at either on your DAO, your SIP forum. But I think it would be wise to change some of the wording in your SIP name, because it did
Yeah.
not come across as though this was a nomination for you for a collection that will be coming to the DAO regardless of whether or not your SIP is passed. That's a very, very important thing. It puts us in a different light, because now that would change this all to be about you and your qualifications, which you seem to have many, by the way. So, what did you say your master's degree was in?
So art business, but I also have I have a master degree in both double master degree in art history and art business that I did in Soda Business Institute of Art, and I also have a bunch of certification from Art Tactic as a art market analyst and a few other things like that. Yeah, that I did throughout the years.
Okay,
But it's
all right,
mostly art focused, and I also have a business administration bachelor degree from a big business school in Europe.
cool.
But I
Okay,
did that. I did manage collection before, just not at the same scale, to be honest. Most of the client I had were within a few 100,000 budgets.
okay. Okay, this is starting to. All right, good, good. I'm so glad we talked. So tell
But
me
yeah, if
about
you have
the.
feedback about the wording and stuff, please do. You know, we are not English speakers, so I know sometimes the wording is a bit tricky.
Yeah,
We
I
had a few
understand the
feedback
word
from the
mandate
Sandbox
now.
team, but
I
mm,
get why you use the word mandate. Let I'll suggest something in the actual forums. What I would recommend, because DAO mandate for DAO collection management makes it seem like it's something different, to an English
okay.
speaker at least. So I would happily provide my opinion for what I think based on what we've been talking about so far. So thank you for giving me your background. I appreciate that, and I understand the key player now. You, and I understand now Jean-Michel, Michel, uh,
Jean-Michel.
Jean-Michel. Tell me about Grida. She's mentioned in here. What is her part in all this?
Yeah. So Grida has been
Grida.
pretty
Okay.
much an art advisor. Yes, it's her French name, but she's a Korean girl. But
Okay,
Korean
got it,
name
got it.
are very difficult to pronounce, so she's going by the name of Grida.
Grida. All right.
Um, so Grida, she's been a manager of the EAM Gallery, which was one of the two digital art places in Paris. There was the NFT Factory from one hand, and there was the EAM Gallery from the other hand.
Wait,
A
what was
lot
the
of
first one? EM Gallery and what else?
the NFT Factory.
Okay, the NFT Factory.
Yeah, and so if you went to NFT Paris, most of the side events would either be at one of those two locations. So has done that for a few years, I guess. The first exhibition she might have done at the M Gallery was in 2021. It must be late 2021, something like that. She managed that for a while, and then this gallery has closed because it was originally a design gallery. Guy behind it just wanted to change some of gears and do another shop, something like that. And so she was sort of hired from that by Sébastien Borger to manage the Artverse Gallery. So now at the moment she's managing the Artverse Gallery. She's also the
I
art
didn't catch
director
that.
of,
She was hired by Sebastian
yeah,
to
to manage
manage what?
the Artverse Gallery. So Artverse Gallery is a specific story. It was supposed to be the new office of the Sandbox at some point, but I think the Sandbox grew too big, and now the place is not big enough to have as much employees as they wanted to have, and so it was switched to a art gallery project. So Artverse is owned by Sébastien Roger. Grida is working
I
as the
can't
gallery
make out that
manager.
word. Can you say what is the gallery called?
Artverse,
Artverse. Okay.
yeah,
Okay. The
Artverse
Artverse
Gallery,
Gallery. So she used to
yeah,
manage what was called the EM Gallery.
EM Gallery, yeah,
Okay, and now she manages the Artverse Gallery.
exactly. They just recently opened. They had two exhibitions so far. and that's one of the reasons she couldn't really participate much in the debate
Oh, okay.
because
Okay.
she was dealing with those exhibitions. Um, Grida also is the art director of the NFC. So if you're an artist and you've shown anything at the NFC, you have been in contact with Grida. And she was
I
usually
don't know what the
managing on
NFC
the
is. What's NFC?
NFC Lisbon. It's a Web3 event
She's the art
in
director for
Lisbon.
NFC Lisbon.
Yeah, she's very close to
Huh.
John Cap. She's pretty much someone that's very well connected, to be honest, because she's very outgoing, outspoken, very positive. Uh, so she has great relation with Sebastian, but also with John Cap, people that I know as well. But she's really just great at connecting and networking. And yeah, so she has a lot of experience with all that. She's been full-time NFT for the last few years, or as long as I know her already. And yeah, and so she couldn't participate much in the debate because she was dealing with our exhibition, which is very takes a lot of time. If anyone made exhibition here, they know what I'm talking about. It's very nerve-wracking and time-consuming. Um, and yeah, and so I know she has done other things in her life before that. I'm not fully aware of her bio, but it's in the SIP as well.
Mm-hmm.
And she's the one that wrote the manifesto that I've mentioned. And she's pretty much what we call a curator, which is a word that has become an umbrella term in Web3. But her speciality is pretty much selecting artists for exhibition and supporting them to trying to sell their work. That's about that. And so she will be mostly helping me on the thematical sort of side of things, so making the catalog, writing the text about it, uh helping up setting up the show, and other mission like that. So she will, I guess, less be involved in the buying and selling part of the operational side of things, but she will help gear things to a specific direction. She will help a lot with the intellectual works that need to be done when writing text, putting up catalog, producing exhibition, things like that. Is more of her alleyway than it's mine as well, but I cannot do everything. And so Grida was, I think, important to include in the SIP because of our large collection with artists, with founders, with builders across that. So I think our network and our capacity of connecting people is a very important skill that could very much help, building up a great collection, especially when reaching out to artists for commission or for private sales, things like that. So yeah, that's about Grida. But I think yeah, she's gonna be a bit absent for the next few weeks also because she's going back to Korea for her family. But yeah, she's also worked with the Korean Art Center and she have good institutional connection. She's mostly someone that I just enjoy working with and that I know can have a very interesting impact when put to use.
And so Grida, tell me if I have this all right. Grida will help you setting up shows, exhibitions, cataloging, and what else?
Also, I guess a bit of the writing text often about the artist, but also like just thinking with me about the thematics that we're going to pursue in our buying strategy.
The
And also,
provenance.
so yeah, no, thematic is about like saying we're gonna focus on this specific notion idea. I've mentioned voxel, for example. We could work on voxel artists, and she will help
Okay.
me like saying which artists are relevant about that or not.
What was that
Uh,
word? Automatics?
vo- uh, thematics,
Thematics.
thematic,
Themes.
yeah,
Thinking about the
themes.
theme of the collection and where you want to focus.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, the th is something that's
Yeah,
very
no, it's okay. It's
complicated to
okay.
pronounce
It's
for
it's
French
it's
people.
my fault, Bryan, not yours. It's my fault.
But
Okay.
yeah, she'll help with thematic and yeah, she's mostly gonna be like in support function. I think a large part of it is I'm gonna deal with because I know she's pretty busy, so she's gonna be quite limited in time. But she will help with our connection, with our network, with people she knows, place she can access to, getting screens. She's someone that can use like a problem solver in a way. So I'm relying on her, whichever if I have a problem or if I need a bit of help, she will be able to provide.
Okay, I'm writing down this so I don't forget. This is a nomination SIP for Arthemort and his team. So Arthemort
Yeah,
Bryan. Brian or Bry?
with a I.
Okay. To manage the future DAO's NFT collection and to curate its theme for. I'll just put it there. Okay, cool. Good. All right, we may get in this later, and I may talk about this in the actual forums. I'm worried about you, Bryan. I'm worried. The SIP that was written is what you're telling me is so much more than what I read. Like this,
Yeah.
you've got qualifications and Grida. You both have a deep expertise in this. You're looking to manage and provide theme and focus to the DAO collection that will be coming to the DAO from the sandbox. I don't think anybody knows anything about this. But we read this,
I think it was very recently decided, to be honest, I believe.
okay, because I read this as just a SandFam person. I'm like, I don't understand what this is asking me to do. What am I voting on? And so
Yeah.
yes, it's important. I think that I'll offer what wording I can to help make this, but for everyone watching, this is a nomination SIP. The DAO is going to be receiving something like 3 million euros worth of artwork and collection from from um from the founders, and
Sandbox
I'm
founders.
right from the
Yeah.
sandbox. So we're talking from Jean-Michel, we're talking from Sebastian, what the sandbox owns already. So ApeCoin DAO. So some of the stuff we're hearing about that, I'm sure is connected to this somehow. Whereas Seb frequently says he wants the sandbox to be the cultural capital of the metaverse, right? This is one of the
Mhm.
ways in which it wants to accomplish that by having a relevant artwork collection that has, as Bryan said, provenance. So a theme, a focus, something that is more than the sum of its parts. It is the whole. So good. That I think Bryan, we really need to work on how it's messaged because that is not coming across in this SIP, at least to me. And I know on the silence that I've been seeing from all the other rest of the community, I think they're in the same boat as I am. So that's why I said I'm worried. I'm happy that you have explained it this way because I would not have known that this is what this was about.
Yeah, it was something that I realized when I sort of had the question coming up. I was like, a lot of the question are not really specific to it, but even within the Sandbox team, you know, there was a lot of question about what is the job of a collection manager, really. Which I know most people
I
don't
think you
know a lot.
explained it well when you said you provide focus and theme, and especially when you said that right now all of the collections are spread out. They're PFP this, their profile picture that, they're one-off collections, maybe a board ape, maybe a whatever. But when you can focus the theme of an artwork collection to be this is helping this and this is helping that, and it kind of builds this provenance that you talked about, and that
Mm,
while you can't give financial advice on that, typically will start to build value because of how the sum of greater than its parts. And that is a powerful message. That is the
yeah,
sort of thing. Go ahead.
it's about giving meanings. That's what I've said. In the SIP, people have sort of clicked on the random accumulation of things because I purposely put that there because it's just to say that as it stand now, this collection is surely worth money, but it's meaningless. It doesn't say anything about the sandbox. It doesn't say anything about the mission, the vision it has. It's just a bunch of stuff in a wallet. And it can be much more than that, is what I believe could happen with this. But yeah, as I said, it was all very recent and went out, and I drafted that SIP in like just a few days when I have time with other projects. So I know it's not quite as it should be as a complete product, but
That's
that's
okay.
the
That's okay.
objective of the
The
of the
fact that you
draft
put it out
section, I
there,
guess.
that's good. That's
Mm.
good. The fact that you submitted it is the most important thing. We can work on the messaging and all that. And that's what this is all about. to clarify, what is the intent? So you said something I want to capture here. The current TSB collection doesn't say anything about the sandbox, and you believe it can be much more than that. Hey, Pepe. We are currently talking about a SIP draft by Arthemort, otherwise known as Bryan, and this is a SIP for his nomination to be the curator of the millions of euros worth of DAO, future DAO collections that the Sandbox currently owns and intends to give to the Sandbox. So yeah, it's called right now. It's called Mandate for DAO Collection Management under SIP drafts. That's what we're discussing right now. Pepe. Pepe was the SIP draft author for Magic Palette that passed right before yours a couple weeks ago. Okay, who are the external advisors? All right, so I think we know what Grida's role is, we know your role, and we know what you want to do, Bryan.
Mm-hmm.
And good. And so you will be what, like the chief curator, like the head curator?
The collection manager, so
Collection
curator,
manager.
you could
Okay.
say curator because in our space, curator is used to define so many different stuff, and I'm not gonna go into the specificity of each term because that's just a boring debate. But yeah, my job is mostly just doing the collection management. So yeah, collection manager is a good title.
Okay, great. All right, so other than you and Grida, who are the external advisors of this?
Well, I don't know if it's a specific section of a SIP if you're supposed to nominate special, external advisor necessarily. But going back to the people in the council, except from from people from Asia that is within this council, I know most of those people. So I guess it's gonna be the council and the advisory board that exists. In Modja, for example, is an artist that I had the chance to work with before.
Who was that?
But
Did you say?
in Modja, I think there was a document about
Ina
people
Modja?
that.
Yeah. No, I watched a video of her. She's on the council. I've been meaning to reach out to her to get her on the podcast as well. Yes, I would love
Yeah.
to. I don't know if you know, but that right there, it's a djembe. It's a drum from that region, from where
Oh,
she's
yeah.
from. But yeah, she's Malian
Yes.
French artist and filmmaker. Does she live in France or does she live elsewhere?
She live in Portugal actually.
Portugal. Okay. Yeah, I've been meaning to. I've been watch each of these along the way, like Loretta and Ina and Mia Bao. Matthew Zafchow is one I just watched not long ago. I've been looking at YouTube videos to try and familiarize myself with them. But Ina and Zaf and Loretta are the ones I want to get on the podcast to kind of help explain what it is they do. So what is your interaction with the advisory board?
So most anyone that is European, pretty much I know personally throughout the years. I was trying to find the list from Google, but I cannot really find it. But I guess that since there are people that have some sort of responsibility toward that they would be the privileged sort of people I would ask for advisory. Uh, but someone that I think is one of the best collection manager in our space, Vincent Van Doog, that created the Three Arrow Capital collection before it went all tits up at some point.
He created the
But
what collection?
he curated the what we call Starry Night Capital. Vincent Van Doog is the founder of AOTM Gallery, Art of the Next Millennials. He was one of the best art dealer in our space. It curated the collection of, I guess, Three Arrow Capital was the company. They were the one behind the Celsius protocol or something like that. They built up a very amazing collection. And when this protocol went bankrupt, was a bit before SBF. Uh, it was under what we call a judicial liquidation. And so, all the sales of Sotheby's that are called Grail sales, it's a series of sales. It's all from the collection built by Vincent Van Doog. And he was one of the first to, invest on art blocks, on generative art in our space. It was a big generative art focused collection. And someone that I'm in touch with that I'm sure would be happy to give advice if I ask for it. So that would be someone that I would have in mind. But
And could
I
you
guess
spell his last name? It's Vincent. What's his last name?
Van Doog. So it's a play on the word on Vincent Dog. So Vincent Van
Vincent
Doog.
Van Gogh. Van Gogh.
Yeah. So yeah, Vincent Van Doog. I guess I can put it in chat. I'm surprised you don't know this guy is big. Uh, uh,
I'll be honest with
Italian.
you, Brian. I am not big into the art world at all. I know very, very little
Yeah,
about it.
it's very NFT specific, but yeah, and so
I
all
see who you're talking about, Vincent Van Gogh.
yeah, and
Okay.
yeah, so that would be someone that given his experience, that I would be enticed to ask advice for. But other than him and a few other people I know of personally, I guess he would be mostly relying on Jean-Michel Pailhon and other members of either the advisory board or council of the DAO. That would make the much more sense, I think.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm always artists are often the best advisor on their own medium, so there's people like, if I were to buy AI artwork focus, I think I would ask, Alexandro Cartega. I think I would ask, Jedi Wolf. If I were to buy photography, I think I would ask Snorkel Guy. I pretty much have huge listing of collectors and what their collection focus is, because I do exhibition on various different medium. So you don't
Okay.
reach out to the same collector for any works. If you're coming up to someone that exclusively collect photography and you're like, I have a great animator to sell you, they're not going to be interested by that because they're not buying this type of stuff. So depending on the medium, depending on the thematic, I think I know as much, legitime slash skillful person that could help me with. It's difficult to say at this point, but in any cases, I do believe that Jean-Michel, within his spare time, would be always able to, answer to a few texts here and there if need be. But
Okay.
they are not specifically nominated as advisory within the SIP. I don't know if that's something that you're supposed to do necessarily. I'm not sure.
No, I don't think
Uh,
so. I don't think so. It's just a matter of who is helping you, who is advising you, what is
uh,
the team.
yeah, not the team, but I'm always, I'm someone that believe very much in collaboration and the strength of working with other people. And so, there's so many people I can just reach out to and ask question, that it's difficult to say, but I believe I'm in good contact with some of the most knowledgeable and talented people in that space regarding to art. And if I were to have this mandate and be able to manage as much funds to buy artwork, that I would very much involve them informally. Is what I meant. Is that a lot of that is informal. That's part of the art world. I would say it's a relationship, reputation based market and world. A lot of things going on goes in informal way. So it would be mostly informal. But yeah, I will not just be me on my in my cave buying stuff on my with my own vase. Part of it is that, but it's a lot of it is trusting other people's expertise as well, asking questions and being curious. I've
That's
always say,
fascinating. Okay.
it's something that I always say that what define a great collectors, and I think every true collectors have this in common. It's curiosity. Uh, Collectors are innately curious people. They're willing to learn about things, learn about people. They're very can be sensible or not, but they're always curious and open to new things. So it's I think it's a big strength, and you know
Got
when
it.
the many people, curious people, you always have something to talk about.
Got it. Okay. Merci, Brian. Merci. That was good. So you and Grida will be managing this artwork. You as the collection manager, her as a curator, like exhibitions and kind of the in person things, and then you will be
Yeah.
bringing on board as advisors, or you will be seeking the advice of all of these other people that you know throughout your career. Many of them big names, it sounds like, and some of them on the advisory board. So
Yeah, I mean, even for
good.
private sale or commission, if I know a big artist is coming up to Fellowship AI or to Brand Drops, I can ask Alexandre Cartega or Justin Trimble to, see if we can reserve some artwork for the DAO or things like that. There's a lot of things goes in informal and personal relationship. A lot of the artists don't mint everything they produce, and so a lot of it goes to sending DMs, discussing with them, negotiating with them on a one-to-one basis, but sometimes with the other intermediaries they're working with. For example, for Basel or for other big exhibition like that, it can make sense to collect works primary market like that. It's not necessarily going to be only secondary markets. So primary market wise, it's often a relationship based sort of system, which I guess my connection, but also the connection of Grida will be very useful for.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. And moving on into the NFTs themselves, how do you decide what NFTs are traded or sold or kept?
A lot of it goes down to the value of them. I guess the biggest asset, I have a document that's a bit outdated, but I have sort of an idea of what those. But for example, anything sandbox related, so sandbox assets, sandbox land will not be sold, of course, because that's a very bad signal if we were to sold that. So those going to be moved to the vault. A large part of the collection value at the moment are Yuga Lab related assets. And I believe that Yuga Lab related assets can be interesting for loan because you can have a good loan to value system with it. So they might not be sold, but loaned against if so we can have liquidity from it, but not necessarily selling them because in our regard, I still do believe that if there is one company in the PFP market that might make it is Yuga Lab, for sure. I mean, given just the fact that they own the biggest collection in the space. But then, there's a lot of things that I honestly consider as, not worthless, but just weird stuff. I don't know, like they have stuff like the minted patchwork abo avatar that I don't know of, VFriend stuff, Bored Ape derivative. They have
Is there a
like
way we can look at this collection? Where is there a link
yeah,
to
yeah.
it?
I can share my screen up if you want to capture device, entire screens,
Sure.
go live. Yeah, up. Ah, doesn't work.
Uh-oh. Try it. Try again.
Otherwise I've put it in the application of
Yeah,
I
if you have the
didn't set.
link, put it in the. Oh,
I
I
put it in
see.
the chat
You
already.
did. You did put in
Yeah.
the chat. Okay. Give me a
But you'll
second.
see that a lot of it are not worthless, but just not that interesting. Some of them are just so worthless that it's not even worth the
Holy
gas
smokes.
to be transferred to. It's a bit
86
outdated.
pages. All right. All right.
86 pages. Is it? Yeah, that's about 86 pages.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's 86 pages. All right.
It's all the wallet concerns. So there's also this wallet, but also for custody based platform links to other platforms. So Nifty Gateway, for example, that are not related to the wallet but are part of the same collection. There's also part of it that is on Tezos as well.
Part of it's on
That's
where?
not on Tezos, the other blockchain, Tezos.
I don't think I know
Tezos.
that.
Object.com, Ikenunk. It's a French blockchain, it's quite old.
Can you link me?
Yes, Tezos.
Wow. This. Okay. So
So
link.
you'll see that a lot of it is, you know, most of it I would like to sell, but the thing is that when you have so many things, you gotta do what we call a ventilation strategy, right? You're not gonna floor everything at once because that's gonna have a very bad impact. And also part of the collectibles that are within, I think, were, you know, community that were onboarded to the sandbox and are very much related to. I think like World of Woman, I would refrain selling because of the history that exists between World of Woman and Sandbox, in the sense that they collaborated a
She's also on the
lot.
special counsel.
Also, but yeah, I don't have, I'm not working for her. I'm working for the DAO, so I don't really have You know, if I want
Touche,
to sell anything,
touche,
you know.
touche, Bryan, touche.
And I know her. I've met her, and I've told her exactly that is that I might need to sell a bunch of women. Who knows? I just think that it would make sense still being involved with those projects just because of the history that there's of it and the fact that those projects are still very much involved with the sandbox. So that would be a very bad signal to floor 50 World of Women at once, and even the collection we're gonna sell, we're obviously not gonna sell all of them at once. We're gonna, sell 10% of it one month, 20% of it the next month. We're gonna ventilate that a bit. So there's gonna be a lot of operational burden, but it's for the best. When you're flooring things, you're not making the most of what you can have. So yeah,
And
and with Tezos, I've sent you a link as well. Aside from saying that's one of the largest blockchain for NFT markets, especially art-centric markets, it's quite well known within the NFT space. But because it's not an L2, but it's a very cheap sort of gas related to blockchain, which enable the fact that you have artists from across the world being able to work to mint on it, but the price of it are very low, so it might represent 2 or 3% of the value of the collection, so it's not really the main
hmm.
focus.
Well,
We might
what
not have
about
the
these?
chef to.
A lot of these I'm seeing are sandbox related avatars like Snoop Dogg or this one right here, Young Woo collection. Those are all sandbox specific. Are you gonna not sell those? Or are you looking to loan those out or what?
Well, I don't think you can get any loan for the sort of asset, to be honest. The asset you can get loan of is usually just, big 101 over ATETH or
Yeah,
uh, things like Bored Ape and CryptoPunk. That's about it.
like Care Bear
I
avatars and the Wild Dance Fight avatars. These are all sandbox specific things. Are you gonna
Yeah,
keep them?
I guess it needs to be decided. I guess we can offload a part of it. I think it's still very important to be, supporting those, but even
Holy
though it doesn't really
smokes!
fit,
Look at all those
even
Paris
though it
Hilton
doesn't really,
avatars. Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
there's a lot of things, but yeah,
That's a
there
lot of
is
Paris Hilton
almost
avatars.
500. So yeah, in a way that's a lot, but that's not my main priority. But I think anything that is sort of linked to the sandbox will not be my priority for sales. I'm going to ventilate that very much. I mean, at least not that's not my priority for the next 3 months. If I renew my mandate for
Have to blur that
January
out.
2025 to December 2025, might offload a bunch of it throughout the month, but we're going to be very careful of not nuking a floor by the fact of selling everything, of course. But yeah, my priority is not selling anything that is related to the sandbox because of I think that's a bad signal and that will be hurting the community. So that's not really the objective there. But also, does it really make sense to have 500 Paris Hilton avatar? I'm not sure, it depends. So that
Yeah.
would be to be decided on case to case basis. But surely a bit of it throughout the years, as long as you're not doing it doubly, which is flooring everything and nuking a floor, you can sell without being too impactful of the floor and the value of those assets on the long term. So it's all about compromising and being cautious about what you're doing.
Okay.
But yeah, anything I would say that, not promising anything there, but anything that is sort of related to the sandbox in a way or form or another is not my priority for selling. I've been much more inclined to selling things like Cyberkong, Artifact,
Uh, because CyberKongz
derivative
is also
stuff.
related to the sandbox. I don't know if you know that.
No, I don't have all the details. That's one of the things I've been trying to is like who's related to what. I think, yeah, a larger part of it is, of course, related to the sandbox itself, which, the fact that he bought that supported the floor of those projects already. So it had this positive impact. So
Gotcha.
it's
But
not
the
unfair
point is
to
that
sell it at some point. But
you wanna start selling the things that aren't related to the sandbox. That's the most important part. Okay.
yeah, I think that's the one nobody's going to complain about
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
obviously. But to be fair, I mean, a lot of it is it's not something I would personally buy for my collection, to be honest. But if it's related to the sandbox, I know that it pretty much bought it to support the floor and support the launch of those projects at some point. So it has had a positive impact. I think it would be fair to sort of say goodbye to those things after a few time, or at least selling part of it,
Mm-hmm.
10% there, 5% here. That's not too much of a problem for a floor. But yeah, I'm not obviously not gonna floor 500 parasiton avatar at once. I might say within the first quarter, let's sell 20 of them, for example. I'm
Okay.
putting something out there
Sure.
random, but I think it's important to keep those assets, but not being overly exposed to them as well is important.
And
I
all of
guess
these and
to
all of these
DAO,
are currently in the possession of the sandbox. And is it your under impression that all of these are going to be transferred to the DAO?
that's my impression. Yes,
Oh,
that's
right
what
there
I've
it is. There's
understood.
that number. 14,233. Got
Yeah,
it.
that's how much return there
Got
is,
it.
and there's been a few added since then. But sometimes what I was saying is like one vault, one operational wallet, but also a lot of those things are not even worth the gas to be transferred. So I think some of them is going to be listed from this wallet already, and we're just going to transfer as one transaction the benefit of those sales throughout. Because if we're just transferring 14,000 item, how much gas that's gonna be? Just ludicrous, right? So I think a lot of it, I don't want to spend the budget in just gas fees. That doesn't make sense.
Good.
So I
That
think
that is a
the
good. That's a
thing,
smart thing for your platform, Bryan. That's smart.
yeah. So that's why, like, even though it's still, the operational part of it, they were mostly like very open to suggestion and idea. I think multi-sig wallet is interesting for operational side of things, but depends. We'll see. But yeah, a lot of that I think I might just sell from that wallet and just send the benefit of those crypto to the wallet of the DAO at some point. I'm not the
Got it.
one that I don't have the private key of those wallets whatsoever, and I will never have. I don't even have a fraction of the private key or multi-sig. Most of what I'm going to do is that I'm set up an operational documents where I'm going to put very detailed order for people that have this bandwidth to be able to operate them. Especially which we have the benefit of having Sandbox staff a bit across the world, covering almost all the time zone. And sometimes you have drop at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. Not gonna be up at 3, I'm not gonna be up at 4 a.m. doing those drop, right? So we'll have people. I will put the order for buying the stuff if need be, and anyone that have access to the wallet in the time zone will be able to operate that. The operational side
Okay.
of things, I think we're still figuring out, and there's gonna be a lot of the first month. It's gonna be about that. It's about just like when you do any audit, it's evaluating the resources and resources and capacity that we have at our disposal, right? I know the resources we have. I don't know all the capacity we have because I'm not part of the sandbox team or anything. So I'm not sure who's doing what, who's in which continents, etc. So this will be a lot of work as set up operationally because you've said it 14,000 items. That's quite a lot. But some things that are not even just worth wondering is that anything that is really sandbox like sandbox the 4,000 something the sandbox that we done name and the 14, yeah, it's like almost 400,000. No, is that 4,000 sandbox related item will mostly be transferred to a vault, I think. uh
Okay.
but also I'm open to suggestion how to manage that operationally from the sandbox member and what do they think. That's why I put the wallet within the SIP so people can look it up, see what's in there, and what they think might be worth dealing with, what we should avoid selling. I'm open to take suggestions in that regard because it's all about supporting the community, and it makes sense to not liquidate things that have been to the benefit of Sandbox at some point that are parent projects, things like that. So I'm open to suggestion, but a lot of that I think is worth to be sold to buy more meaningful artworks, to be honest.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm quite open to suggestion in that regard because I'm not aware of every project that are related to Sandbox. I've been very transparent about the fact that I'm not a landowner. I don't have much sandbox asset, anything like that. So I'm pretty ignorant or at least a stranger to a lot of what has happened to the sandbox and project they're dealing with and have worked with. That's why I've mentioned Cyberpunk without knowing that at some point related to the sandbox.
Yeah,
So yeah,
they own a 12 by 12, I believe it is, but they've been involved in the sandbox for quite a while as an avatar that you can own and play with in the sandbox. So yeah,
Mhm.
there's some pretty big names when it comes to that, like
But
Everest
that's also
and Cyber Syndicate
yeah.
and CyberKongs. There's a lot of them.
But that's also where, sometimes personal connection and network can help. If we're reaching out to those projects, asking them if they want to buy back those things because that would be more useful
Ah,
for them to buy them back themselves, even if we get less E from it, but at least it's done in a much better way, I guess, at least in terms of mutual trust. Sometimes we can be dealing with other DAOs if there's DAOs or PFP that might be interesting in swapping artwork for PFP stuff like that. There's many ways you could go about things without necessarily flooring them, right? That's what I've mentioned. I've mentioned loaning, but it's mostly swapping and private deals with builders, project themselves, or the DAOs. I think those are all possibilities that I think I could consider.
okay,
Some of them take more work than others, but if it's for the best, I think it might be worth sometimes swapping things rather than selling them. Might be worth sometimes to reach private deals with projects that are concerned by that or project that have a relationship with Sandbox already.
got it.
Depends on what the community wants, but
Okay, I think you
more
laid it out pretty clearly. Thank you for that. That makes sense. What is the connection to you mentioned you linked corporate art collection and it shows the top 40 collections in the world. What is your connection or the SIP's connection to that?
so that was what I was saying you about Pernod Ricard before that. It's just the idea of what's the benefit of having an art collection as a business. What are the
Okay. And
positive
what was that word?
externalities?
I keep messing it up. Panuika?
Pernod Ricard. Yeah, it's a very difficult word to say, but
Type
it's
it out to me in Discord.
yeah. Uh, Pernod Ricard is an alcoholic beverage from the south of France that we call the yellow.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's mixed with water, etc. But I took this example because they set up the Prix Marcel
Panuika.
Duchamp, which is very important in the contemporary art world. Just to take an example of saying, there's being successful corporate art collection, and usually having those collection, have a lot of benefit down the line to, being recognized as a business, being able to do lobbyism toward the cultural industry, and stuff like that. If the Sandbox were to build one of the most prominent art collection in French business, you have the chances are that, we'll be able to be more closer to the Ministry of Culture in France. We'll be able to get more institutional reconnection at some
Oh,
point,
I
which I
see. I
think
see. Okay.
so. All
Got
that
it.
it's mostly used as a lobbyism system, to be honest. Might be not the right word for it, but in spirit, that's a bit what it
Provenance.
is.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Got
this
it.
one is a bit used to in any regard, but yeah, it's pretty much about that. That's why I've just linked it other example because when I've talked about it in with Geraldine from Sandbox, they were saying, "Oh, do you have any other example of that?" And so I saw this article that was listing 40 of them, so I was like, "Okay, you might as well put that in."
Panaricat.
Pernod Ricard, ouais.
My French
Yeah.
is terrible. Terrible.
Oh, don't
Okay.
worry. It's very the worst business I could have picked up from because it's the most French ending. But I guess I use them as well because they did a bunch of panels and conferences around digital art and NFT before. They work with a French artist called Niel Beloufa, which is represented by a big gallerist in France called Kamel Menour. That is pretty much like this big three big gallery in France. There's Templon, Perrotin, and Kamel Menou. And yeah, so yes,
Gotcha.
just personal story with that. So that's why I've mentioned this specifically. But I realize now that if you're not into the art world, you don't really know what I'm talking about. But that's
I have
fine.
no idea, Bryan. No
It's okay.
idea.
It's okay, and it's
All
very
right.
specific contemporary art on top of that.
Okay.
But yeah, well, just to give some example of that and say is that arc the fact that other business own art collection, and it does make sense for Sandbox to do as well.
Got it. No, it makes sense. Corporate art collections and helping to build that vision that Seb has said very frequently, which is he wants Sandbox to be the cultural capital of the metaverse, and he believes that one of the reasons why that's so important to him is because he believes that organizations that last and that are powerful and that are widely used is because they help build on that cultural capital, that social capital,
Mhm.
that and you'd like to curate that to help improve the Sandbox's standing in its corporate art collection. Okay.
I couldn't say it better myself. So yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
So something that really confused me in the SIP and the
Hmm.
solution proposed, and I'll move it down here so people can see what I'm referring to. The solution proposed, it starts talking about unique artwork, one of one, and then unique
Yes,
artwork of a series, one of X, and then it starts talking about deceased artists. Can you help? What does that mean?
artists that are dead.
Yeah, but what is all that in relation to each other, and one of X, and I don't
Yeah.
understand.
You don't know this classification?
Mm-mm. You're
Okay.
talking to a gamer, someone who's like a business person. I know nothing about the art world, and I'm willing to say that most of the sandbox doesn't either. The SandFam.
Okay. So 101 refer to unique artwork that exists in one edition. It's the
Like
most
Mona
sought
Lisa?
after. This is it's difficult to say to take an example
It's
like that,
okay.
but I guess let me find an example for that. The Mona Lisa, in a way, if we go into details, not really, but for the common knowledge, let's say yes, it's a unique artwork
Okay,
that
thank you.
is that that only exists in one format, even though people think it exists in other ways, but it doesn't matter. There's only one Mona Lisa, and that's a 101. Uh,
Okay.
Photographer, for example, when you take a photography and you print it, you can print it as an edition, right? So it's a 1 out of 30, 1 out of 50, 100, 1000. This is not a 101 anymore. 101 is a very, I guess, quite a specific to NFTs, but it exists in painting. Pretty much a painter usually produce 101 artwork because it's just too much of a hassle to paint the exact same painting. It's not very interesting anyways.
Oh, okay. I
Uh,
see. I see.
so it's about the number of editions. So 101 is a unique artwork, and a 101 of X is what we call a unique artwork in a series. So any art blocks project, generative art project, is a 101 of X. If you take a Jackson Pollock, for example, Pollock, he used what we call a pendulum to paint his painting with dripping. It's
Yeah,
a
yeah. I've
it's a
seen those
it's a
TikToks. Someone
yeah
loads up a paint can and yeah. Okay.
it's a bucket. It's technically mathematical, right? Because pendulum depends on the rotation of the Earth and a bunch of things
Sure.
like that.
Physics and all that. Yeah.
Uh, so it's the same technique that produce works in series. So these drip
Huh.
paintings are works in series. It's the same series. It's all unique painting, but part of the same series, right? And generative art project like Squiggles or even the CryptoPunk are 101 of X, which means that they are made from the same algorithm, but all unique artwork from the same collection. So it's unique, but also there's exist other ones that are unique as well. So
Okay.
every CryptoPunk is unique, but they sort of look like look similar in a way, right? It's part of the same collection. So 101 of X is just a terminology to say unique artwork in a series. And that's true for mostly generative art. You would have that for a few photography projects, but that's rare. And more recently, projects like Braindrops in AI are 101 of X projects. So this is a category that in art is interesting. Why? Because there's a large number which make it so that it's quite liquid. and there is usually enough transactions so you can easily tell how much it's worth, right? So when you have a squiggles selling every day, you sort of have a notion of how much a squiggle is worth because you can say, well, there's one that sold yesterday. Of course, there's a notion of rarity that comes to it sometimes, but it pretty much tells you a squiggle is worth $13,000 for the last few years. When it's about unique artwork or others work in other series, when you haven't had a sales in a year, in 3 months, when it's a very different works from what another you can compare, it's quite difficult to come up with estimates. It was the big part of the job I was doing at Sotheby's was producing estimate for the work, and it's just a very difficult process because you have to compare value in E, value in fiat, uh, certain years that are worth for more than others, and other factors that are both qualitative and quantitative. So it's not all mathematical, but it's just part of what does the valuation of an artwork. So 101 and 101 of it, or one of X, is just terminology for unique artwork, edition, or unique artwork in a series.
Okay.
And when I'm saying DC's artists, it might be odd because you might say, oh, most NFT artists are alive, right? Well, there's actually a bunch that are dead and that are still very interesting. Namely, Vera Molnar, for example, the generative artist that released the project with Sotheby's. She died last year at 101 years old. There was Herbert W. Frank, as well, a pioneer of generative art that died 2 years ago at 81, that did a generative project. Frank Stella as well, that did a project with ASNR in the US, NFT project, and he died, I think, a few months ago. And you have also in our space one of my favorite artists, Alotamoni, that did few stuff in the Sandbox, but that was mostly known as a big voxel architect in crypto voxel. Did die 2 years ago. And so I just wanted to be broad in the sense of if we give more data on specific things, I just wanted to cover all the bases and be like, I'm open to very various different typology of work depending on the strategy. And I was going to say living and emerging artists, and I thought, oh well, there's a bunch of artists that did die and that are still very interesting to integrate within the collection. So just to cover all the bases, I've put living and deceased artists. Uh, yeah, but that was just the reason. It was for the sake of covering all of my bases.
Okay. Got it. Nope, makes sense. So let's move on down to risk analysis.
Hmm.
Um, does going from well-known profile pictures to independent artists means that we'll have less money, less profits? It'll be worth less value.
Well, I believe it's the opposite actually. I mean, to be fair, the way you make money on collectibles project and PFP avatar is to be a early investor in it, and so to have an interesting entry point, which is not really the case anymore with collectibles. Like if we were to buy more collectibles, let's say we want to buy a CryptoPunk because there's not a CryptoPunk in the collection. You know, is it worth it? I'm not sure. It's been the CryptoPunk worth, even though it's fluctuated in ETH value from 50 ETH to 30 ETH, it pretty much remained within the 100K, 120K in fiat value for the last few years. So it's been down. The floor in ETH has been down, but the floor in fiat has been quite stable. So if we were to buy one now, I don't know if it's gonna worth more than 150K the next 3 years, honestly. Uh, CryptoPunk were very much worth to be bought when they were 3 ETH, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 euros. Yes, they were worth buying back then. But I have a few data that I have just on my phone. I couldn't share this document because it's under NDA. But what I have as an example is that a little citation from Greg Capital. Uh, so they did some sort of audits of the last few years' value, where if I've lost 26% of value in USD was like last year. Generative art was down 15%, AI art was down 18%. The art side of things were generally down 20%, whereas the collectible market was down 40. And so it is. it tends to as for a contracted market and a bear market, which people are arguing if we are in bull market or bear market. For NFT, we still very much in bear market. I believe that art is more resilient than PFP. The profitability of it when you're scouting for emerging artists is much more interesting. I mean, I can talk from experience. I had the chance to be an early investor in NFTs as soon as in 2019. But in 2020, the things that brought me the most return were art buy. I was very lucky because I managed to get like Beeples for $1 on drop. So, this return on investment on $1 on the Beeple, ludicrous. It's worth 80 if now, in average 70 if maybe. So art is not necessarily a bad investment. Can be a great investment when you're lucky sometimes, and when you have some flair and some eyes. That depends, a vision at least. So it's difficult to put a definitive answer to it. It's for sure less. If you want to make money with PFP, if you want to blur farm, blast farming, and stuff like that, it's quite intense operationally. You have to do a lot of transaction. And one of the things we're quite limited on when you have a collection that is under the custody of a DAO is that you want to limit the number of people that have access to this wallet. And this is more safe, but it's also more operationally a burden. And so if you want to make, I don't think we have the operational capacity to honestly be able to make banks with PFP in the way that you're supposed to do it if you want to make banks with it. So it seems much more smart to sort of limit the number of assets. I think like we're gonna go from 14,000 assets to, I'm targeting something like 300 at most. Would be much more manageable on the long term.
From
If you have
14,000 to 300.
Yeah, that's about that. Like our collection doesn't need to be huge. When it becomes too big, it's just an accumulation. So I want to refocus it with a mix, but some of the purchase I want to do might be 10 if plus, and those assets, I think could bring interesting results on the midterm. Like Joe Peace, for example, I've had pretty interesting sales. Uh, Other artists like that, but it will be much more manageable because then the question is, the number of time going to take is just tenfold more important. So when this collection will be built up and the DAO might want to sell it at some point, I think it would be much more easier to liquidate 300 assets that are worth 10 ETH, 5 ETH, several ETH each at least, than liquidating 14,000 assets that are in 0.1, 0.001, stuff like that. Because then
The
the gas
gas
fees doesn't
fees.
really make it better. So it's just a different strategy from, with a more concentration, with just limited number of assets. I don't know if I can use an analogy from it
No,
that
I
makes
get what you're
more
saying.
sense.
I think it's clear. You
But
to
yeah,
go from
if
14,000 to 300, it saves on not only gas fees, but you have a meaningful collection that you can manage. Whereas at 14,000, it's all over the place. At any point in time, you can lose track of assets, and because it's too many thousands.
and also, I mean, to make banks and just make money and profitability out of PFP, it requires such a big number of transaction that I don't even think it's implementable within the system that exists for this collection with the
Okay.
custody with. So it would be possible, let's say if we have one very big gambler degen with immense talent and we say, oh, take the private keys and have funds and makes money. I'm sure someone could make that and manage that, but then the risk of it is huge because anyone can just run with the bank. So what I mean is that it's not impossible, but I just think that we don't really have the resource and capacity, and the basis of any strategy is to adapt it to the resource and capacity that is at disposal. And yeah, I cannot, we're not gonna make
That
a.
makes
We
sense.
might, yeah, voilà, I
With
don't know.
safety in mind. With safety in mind, risk management, and with the capacity that you have. Okay.
Exactly,
Okay. Okay, good. Well, that was very good to know what your vision is. I think that's another thing you should emphasize is that plan, because I don't think that is clearly understood here. There's a lot of words in this thing in the SIP. Most of it is good to know, but it doesn't really give me a sense of what your plan is until I get down to the 90-day plan, which is what I want to go over next. Is that 90-day plan you have going from collection cataloging in September to loaning and selling before October, then your first wave of acquisitions before November, and then last would be before December is AMAs reporting results and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, when I had that in the template, I was a bit iffy about it because a lot of the things we're gonna be actually doing is a lot of everything in the same times. Like, doesn't make sense to not work on the catalog until December because it saves you much more time to do it right when you buy it because you have the ideas much more clearer. But for the sake of legibility and understanding, we've sort of matched this template, but the reality of the job is much more complex and you have to do a bit of everything in the same times. One of the reasons everything is not that clear is because part of the job is also to make that plan. And I've put up a bit of time in making this proposal, etc. It's very unusual for me to, ask to be elected for a job. Usually, I just deal with private collectors directly. So even as a French guy, putting out there my remuneration is a very odd experience to me,
Hmm,
because we have a lot of taboo in money on money and stuff like that. So it's to be adapted to the legibility of it. But the truth is that a lot of it is we have to do in the same times, and I cannot dedicate like 20 hours of my week to put up a very detailed plan that I don't know if I will be able to implement. Even if
got it.
itself, the fact that it might use for the DAO is like, it's something that, as a curator, I've always been very adamant to not work for free. And that's a problem that many of the intermediaries we have in our space, especially curators, a lot of them work for free. And that just is something that doesn't benefit anyone. And so, yeah, I mean, to be
Touche.
entirely transparent, I'm not willing
Touche.
to put, 35 hours of my week just because first I don't have that time, and second because I'm not putting all that times invested if I'm not sure to be paid for it, to be honest. So that's why
So
a
how
lot
much
of it is
time
still
will
in
you be
draft.
devoting? If this SIP were to go through, you get hired. How much time are you going to be devoting?
I've sort of estimated that it would take me somewhere in between 4 to 6 days a month.
4 to 6 days a month?
Yeah, which every day would be like, standard 9 hour day, pretty much. But usually for collection management, you're sort of billing it by at sort of a daily price. Yeah. So I'm gonna take a specific day because I'm already dedicating 2 days a week to outcrush my startup. And then I have also all my exhibition project that I'm working on a 4 to 5 month basis, but that can take me, when an exhibition is running, it's a full week that I cannot, have. So yeah, it's not gonna be yeah. So the estimate is 4 to 6 days a month, pretty much.
And you think 4 to 6 days a month, you believe that that is going to be enough to go through the plan of cataloging and selling and acquisitions and reporting?
Yes, because we do have the operational team of the Sandbox, so I just have to put orders in the
Oh,
document. They can follow it through. But I'm not gonna be the one behind the computer and putting bids on OpenSea. So in that regard, yeah, it's gonna be sufficient. I'm most likely gonna do extra hour. I'm already pretty confident about it. We'll see about the operational side of things, but yeah, I think for the first few months where we have to set up a lot of system, etc., it's gonna be full days work, and that I need to be only fully focused on. And
okay.
4 days is enough, even just if one month. But first, because a lot of it I've already sort of have in my mind, I've a listing of artists, of thousands of artists, I have listing of people to get in touch with. I got in contact with a lot of people. That's a lot of that preliminary work is already done in a way. But it's come down to experience and skills. But yeah, that's what I've sort of you know estimated. If it's more, it's gonna be more. And the budget, I guess we'll see how we deal with the budget. But I guess if it's over time and I realize it doesn't take me 6 days a month, it takes me 10 days, then I will adapt for the next SIP if this one happen to adapt just more budget because I need more workload. But
Got
yeah,
it.
I base the budget on the estimation of my workload at some point.
Yeah, and I see that the estimation of your budget was 30,000 pounds for 4 months?
Yes, so that include the exhibition, right? So the exhibition itself already have some invoicing, but if you want to do it in Paris with a gallery that already has screens, we can get some. I'm not the people, so I get preferable rates. But you're somewhere around 15K a week at the very least, and that's like the cheapest option. So we could
15K
do
a
it
week to
shorter.
do exhibitions in Paris?
Yes, it's spaces are very expensive, but then there is trick to go around and stuff like rather
So
than buying
that's it's not even really
renting
enough to even
screen.
do 2 exhibitions.
No, no, no. There will not be I think once per quarter would be more than enough. I do believe that, Grida, through Artverse and through the fact that it's owned by Sebastian, would most likely, I guess if they can give us for free, then the cost will just be F&B and communication and a few like design stuff we might need and a few salaries here and there. Uh, but yeah, the document like that. But yeah, it's usually like the Artverse gallery. Their rates is like 4,000 a day. So yeah, the rate is if you were to rent the Artverse gallery from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m., which is usually the times when you have an opening day, it will cost you around 4,400 euros before tax. So yeah, that just cram up very fast. So that's why, especially every exhibition project is different. If you're doing for a fair, if you're doing it in Paris, in London, or Taipei, it's very different. So I was thinking that if we were to do exhibition more often, it would go through its own SIP projects because an exhibition,
Okay.
anyways, takes about 3 months to organize. In terms of just things you have to work on, contract and stuff like that. Depends on if you're doing with artists and consigning. I mean, it's a lot of details that I brush off there, but it's several months of work. So it can go through a SIP project because that doesn't impact too much the timeline. And budget might need to be adaptable if you want to be at ETHSC or if you want to be at the Metaverse Summit or for a specific project where we have to rent out a booth. An exhibition can cost from 5,000 to 5 million euros. Depends on what you're doing.
Okay.
So it's
So this
difficult to budget
30,000
within that.
pounds, 15,000 of it would
Yeah,
be for one exhibition, and the rest of it would go to the team?
yeah, pretty much. My daily rate is somewhere around 1,000 euros a day, before tax, to be entirely transparent with you. Whereas Grida, it's a bit less because she's not doing the collection management part and the producing of a lot of those documents. She's more around 600 euros a day. Yeah, that's about that.
Okay. Okay. And so yours is about 1,000 bucks a day. Greta's a little bit less than that, and 15,000 it would go to at least one exhibition.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm sure I could find some deals for the exhibition to make it happen in a more interesting way, at least a more cheapest way. But you know, the space is just one expense, right? When you're doing exhibition, you have to rent out a truck to bring some stuff. Sometimes you have to buy scenographic elements. Even the things, if you write a text, if you want to print out that text and glue it to the wall, that's usually a couple hundred of euros here and there. I mean, so many costs. I've managed
Jeez.
to I managed to keep down my costs, but even when I'm producing my own shows, it usually costs me, aside from the renting of the place, somewhere around 10K for screens, scenographic element, printing,
Sheesh.
invitation, all of that, and yeah, that's all of my pocket. And then there's the renting of the space and stuff like that. For NFT Paris, for example, it costed me more than 10,000 euro without the booth. So, and we were one of the most cheapest, tight, tight budget. One of the things we do, for example, is renting rather than renting screens. We do one very cheeky thing is that we buy the screens, and within the European Digital Act of 20 something, Whichever you buy online in European country, if you're not satisfied, you can be reimbursed within 15 days. So rather than renting screens for 2 weeks, which will cost us 3,000 euros, I
Hmm.
just buy 10K worth of screens and bring them back to the shop within 15 days to be reimbursed.
Got it. Okay.
So I save the renting cost. It's a bit of a cheeky process. It's very much if you have friends that did rave parties or that are musicians, they often do that rather than renting out the gear. They buy it and sort of bring it back to the shop to be reimbursed. Treasury wise, it seems like you have a big hole of 15,000 for a while, but then you get reimbursed within 15 days as well. But yeah, there's a way to save money and cut corners, but that's a bit of a French specialty.
Gotcha.
But yeah, those things
Okay.
cost a lot. That's one of the reasons why I wasn't sure if we were going to include it within the budget because those projects, depending on the location, the city, can be very different projects and different budgets. So there's yeah, I mean I think they're gonna be their own SIP later on. But just because I had some invoicing from Grida for the Adverse Gallery, I think that it was important to put it in there,
Got it.
at least for the first part.
Okay.
But overall, yeah, it's quite open to feedback on that regard as well.
One more question before we go back to you and I and we look at closing. What is the Sandbox Digital Art Manifesto? And how is it connected to the SIP? Uh-oh, did we freeze again? Oh no. Oh, we froze. Okay, so while we get back unfrozen, wow. This was unexpected in a good way. This was definitely unexpected in a good way. I did not gather that this was a nomination SIP, and it's clear that he has deep expertise in this field. So if there were someone to manage the digital art portfolio, do you agree? Do you
Of
agree
course,
with what he's saying that he wants to expand the focus or focus the portfolio from 14,000 things to much more refined things that apply directly to the sandbox that really talks about how we are the cultural capital of the metaverse. That is what Bryan is looking to do here. And are we back
I'm
yet,
back,
Bryan?
Lanzer. Yeah.
Okay, great. So we were just kind of rehashing a little bit what I had learned so far. So what I asked was, what is the Sandbox Digital Art Manifesto and how's it connected to the SIP?
So the Sandbox Digital Art Manifesto was a text written by Grida. I believe it was all planned for another SIP that never were submitted. And it's just the idea of putting, to have a thesis around the collection and just, I guess, saying what is it that we all agree on? Like, well, what is a manifesto? A manifesto is just a document with a bunch of academic reference that meant to be some sort of a constitution, right? And so manifesto is meant to be some sort of constitution of the project, but it's just an annex document that was meant for another things. It was just to say that those things can be academically justified and that there is a lot of thought that goes into it that can be reference and peer reviewed. So yeah, this manifesto I guess will tend to evolve, but it was just a document from a previous SIP of Grida that I think was relevant to that SIP and was interesting to include as an annex. It's not part of the main SIP, just an annex, which is just to say, hey, there's already has been a bunch of works made around those idea, and here's what have been made so far.
Okay. So down here at the bottom it says Sandbox acknowledges the artistic and historical weight. Our goal is to integrate digital art into mainstream cultures for artists, collectors, institutions, galleries, brands, global audiences. This involves creating a culture of free consumption and sharing of digital art. What does culture of free consumption mean?
I didn't write that text, so I couldn't tell. Um, Sounds a
Okay.
bit odd than that, but I think it refers
You
to the
you
notion
artists,
of
you artists and your
gatekeeping.
phrases.
I think it does. If I were to do a free interpretation of it, I believe it refers to the notion of gatekeeping, which is very much important in the art world,
Okay.
whereas you sort of limit the people. If you can be a billionaire if you knock up at a big gallery and want to buy the biggest artist they have in this gallery, you're not going to be able to do so. They are selecting where they're selling to. And you often sometimes have to buy another artist before being able to buy this main artist. So there's a lot of gatekeeping exclusivity process, and I think it just refers to the notion of, you know, blockchain and the NFT market being decentralized, uh, disintermediated, all of that.
Okay. Meaning it is open for public viewing. Okay. And then to this end, we plan to acquire NFTs with cultural, social, historical, scientific, and aesthetic significance. That's in line with what you've been telling me so far. And
Mhm.
enhance digital arts popularity through exhibitions and educational initiatives. I didn't hear you talk much about educational initiatives. Did you have any planned?
So that was mostly the big part of what Grida was doing for our previous SIP. There was a very big incentive on education. So bear in mind that this document was produced for another SIP that was made by Grida, but sort of related to the DAO as well and collection
Mm-hmm.
in a way. But yeah, large part of when you're producing a catalog, for example, the catalog we're going to produce at the end of each quarter, is an educational tool in a way. It would teach, I guess, people about medium of art, technique, thematic, notion, and aesthetic. So what we're doing here is quite educational in a way as well. Like we're talking about notion of the art world that you might not be very familiar with. This is, I guess, something that would be quite educational in a way. So even just talking about this topic and providing resources that the Sandbox DAO members can refer to and feel connected with will have an educational benefits. And this educational benefit as well is quite interesting for just people that is outside the Web3. It's one of the things I'm doing is I've mentioned Art Crush. We're doing exhibition across the world on billboards. Uh, Most of that we're doing, we're not getting paid for. The idea of what we're doing that is we participate to building up the visual culture of the next generation. If you were growing up commuting to school and seeing digital art on a daily basis on billboards rather than ads for McDonald's or whatever, you might have been more sensible to new aesthetic, especially aesthetic that are developed on the internet and by digital artists because it's very specific. Like glitch art, for example, is an aesthetic that is quite difficult to connect with when you've never been exposed to it. You just refer it as a visual bug,
Mm-hmm.
as trash has to be disregarded, whereas it can be an aesthetic and a movement that is appealing and could reach your sensibility. There is connective bias, the more you see something, the more you tend to like it. So education is also about exposure, and we have to expose as many people to that as possible. And I think that could lead to interesting externality in consequences. But yeah, it's a bit of the bias and cognitive bias that exists, So the educational part, the only thing of having people reflecting on having an art collection for the DAO, thinking of thematic that are explored, perhaps visiting the exhibition we're going to set up, reading the catalog we're going to make, might participate to the art education, and that will be, I guess, very much profitable for their social capital, but also cultural capitals on the long way. That's something that I always say. It's great to talk about, I guess, cryptos and metaverse and NFTs at the dinner, but it's always more exciting to talk about art. I guess in my area, and
In your
yeah, we
world,
just
yeah.
yeah. When you want to even well, I've been with Degen and what people. You can talk a bunch about this coin's going up and this one going down. But that doesn't make the most interesting dinner usually. It's
Depends on
other
who you
things
have
that
dinner with, Brian. Because if you had dinner with me, that'd be great. I love that.
I guess it depends. But even in video games, the ray tracing. We could talk about ray tracing and the technique behind video games, but about Doom and stuff like that. But the cultural and the video editor and the directors that are behind the video game and the artistry that goes into it is, to me, the most interesting part of video games, for
Hmm.
example. Even technique, I mean, technique are interesting, procedural generation, stuff like that, super great, but it's technique is here to serve a purpose and to serve the aesthetic, usually to serve the art. So I think it's it is to my sense a bit more of an interesting discussion. But what I mean by that is to be educated, you need to be exposed to sort of things. And art, the main problem with art is that it's behind huge gates. It's to see art, you need to go to the museum, you need to go to the gallery. Usually it's quite an intimidating experiences that most people are not willing to do. So you need to almost shove it up to their face in a way that you have to make it so it's the most accessible way for them to be to be exposed to those sort of things. And the more they're exposed to art, even if they don't get it, even if they're not interested by it at first, after a while, seeds, you can sow the seeds that you've planted. And so it's all about sowing seeds, and hopefully, some of them will flourish and bloom in many, fantastic way, but we never know. It just, yeah, the educational part of it, I think, is like we could sort of pedal back to it, just expose people to it, and just have people think about it in a way, in any way, form or shape possible. It can be panels during exhibition. It can be yeah, articles, threads about the artist that the DAO is collecting. There's many ways to produce content, and cultural content and educational content is a bit of the same thing to me. So I think in that regard, this will be educational. But it was the main focus of Grida original SIP. I've kept it. I've kept our text as is because I would not edit anyone works without the permission, and I didn't have the time for to rework it, so I just included it within the annex because I think
Sure.
that's the type of document people would be, confronted to when we do a quarterly catalog, for example. And there's been, references like Walter Benjamin, work that I'm sure if a few people read it like that will might think, oh, who's that guy and what did he write about? And they might Google it, they might check it out, and they might learn something. Who knows? So yeah,
Okay.
that's just was an example of what sort of document we might produce. That's why I put it in the annex.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you. And also, wasn't able to access your response when you attached the catalog under Expo English. I wasn't able to access that.
Ah, my bad.
Yeah,
This
it's
should
okay.
weird. That's where it should be openly accessible links, but
Yeah, it said I needed to request access. But other than that, thank you. Let's go to. Do you have anything for us? Is there anything you'd like to go over or talk about before we close?
I guess the biggest worry I have about that SIP is not reaching the quorum, and I think a lot of it has to do with
Yeah.
being understood and understand, and that people understand what this is objective. So I guess from your experience, I'm just curious of what do you think is needed to reach that quorum and to be sure that we, even if it's for a negative response, but to at least have people engaged and willing to participate to the discussion.
That
Because
is
so far there's been
that's a great
you
question.
and Pepe, which are, I guess, two people that are very much involved in every SIP and feeding back. So I would very,
Yeah.
very happy to be able to provide, answer to other people question if they are willing to ask them.
Yeah, there are three things that come to mind immediately. One is Bulls on the Block on Saturday. So that was maybe a few hours ago. Bulls on the Block. Every Saturday they get together. They're a delegation. I just interviewed them a few days ago when I also interviewed Seb, and
Hmm.
they represent at least over 100,000 voting power. So I'll link them to you. Every Saturday they're on Twitter Space. Also, the Mocaverse Hall, also known as United Grand Halls, on Monday nights, which I think for Europe is it might be a little early. I think let's do World Time Buddy real fast. So for you're in CEST, right? France.
Hmm.
So I think they're doing it at 6 p.m. now. Is it 6 p.m. or 9 p.m.? So for you that would be a.m. So that might be a little tough, but if you could make it at least one time when your SIP goes for vote, I think that'll help you out big time because Mocaverse has a lot of voting power. And
D'accord.
yeah, so I'll link that to you as well. That'll be on Mondays. And then reaching out to MocaCN, which is the Chinese community within the Mocaverse. I'll give you their Twitter handle. They have they're separate from Mocaverse Halls on Monday. They have a huge voting power within the sandbox. So it would be very helpful for you to reach them. And then maybe I'll give you Pepe's handle, the Voxel Gem. He recently put together a list of people he contacted. Maybe he will be willing to share that with you. Or maybe it might be a little out of date because it was with his SIP for Magic Palette. But he might be willing to share that with you to where you can also reach out to different people. That's the best that we have. We might be able to link you up with Coffee with Captain, which is a daily Twitter Space show. They sometimes cover Sandbox, but not all the time. But they have a very large viewership, a large audience. Those are the only things that I can think of right now because the Sandbox DAO, the SandFam, is not well organized. So it's not like you can
Mm.
only go to this place and you'll reach everyone. It's like you have to hit all these little 14,000 different things, right? The sum of its parts that we were talking about. That is the SandFam right now. It's not one size fits all. It's not this will reach everything. It's a lot of itty bitty little avenues, and through that you reach Quorum. So we're still working on that as a new DAO. That's the best advice I can offer you. That's one of the reasons why I had you come on this show because I know that when I put this in my podcast for RSS, for Spotify, for YouTube, I'm going to be blasting it out to all sorts of different places so that they can get an idea of what it is that you're about. And that's the best that we can do right now.
Because I've been, I don't know why I'm not in the Discord, but I think it's because I've joined it, left it, and now I cannot join it anymore. So, is it worth? I mean, is a lot of the discussion happening on Discord even, or not really?
It's another one of those. It's one of the avenues. It would be worth it for you to go on there and to go to the DAO discussion forum.
Mm-hmm.
You're not a landowner, so you won't have access to the landowner chat. That's really who you should connect with. But I will
Okay.
already post our video in there, so you'll have access to that through me, which I will post. Okay, so
Okay.
that's and you can always get in touch with the Sandbox team like Pepe, not Pepe, Remy and Remy Bompard. Sebastian will easily connect you to that sort of people. That Discord channel is very active, so we talk all the time in there. And when I post our our interview later on, either today or tomorrow, whenever I can get to it, then they'll see that. But it's the constant touching, it's the constant exchanges that will really help you win Quorum. It's reaching out to all these different people that Pepe might have access to, MocaCNs, the Mocaverse halls, and BOTBs, and then through some measure of luck, enough people see it and they vote in the snapshot. That's what matters, is getting them to see it. Because once they see it and they understand your nomination and they understand your details, then they'll be like, oh, okay. Then I can decide whether or not I really believe in your vision and your goal. So it's not a great answer, Bryan. We're still very new. We're still not even 2 months old, really. That's the best
No,
we
so
have.
it's a new process for me as well. I've never been that much involved with. Yeah, one of the things I like with my job is that I don't have to give. I often don't really have to report to anyone or things like that. So when you own your gallery, you're taking your own risk. You're dealing with things as happens,
Hmm.
and yeah, which it's a not process to me to go through those sips and stuff. But I understand the point of view, and I understand the reason behind it.
Yeah.
It just yeah, I'm always whenever I it's always like it's always frustrating to have your effort goes to waste, which I don't. I was sort of trying to manage a balance between how much I can dedicate time to support the SIP as well as my other project. So So yeah, it's a bit of a balance, but if I can have access to the right people so I can make the most of my time, that is very much interesting for me.
Yeah. Well, I definitely understand the. So for me, in my voting, I wasn't sure I was going to vote for this until you and I spoke. And then you explained to me what it is. And the thing that I think convinced me that I would vote yes to is even though you can only spend 5 or so days on it, your plan is to refocus 14,000 down to a smaller number that you can manage and then build provenance on. And what really convinced me is when you said that you weren't just going to sell everything. You weren't just going to sell all the sandbox things. And you were willing to learn and take feedback from like CyberKongs. Very important to the sandbox. It's been involved for a long time. And maybe that's not selling all of it or maybe loaning it or whatever your decision is there if you are the curator, but you're going to take a more reasonable approach to it, and you're not just looking to sell it all and then restart anew. It's there's a logic behind it, and as we've spoken, you've clearly laid out your expertise. You've been in doing this for a while. You understand, you know the people behind it, you have the right connections, and to me that spells out a reasonable approach to something that I wouldn't have considered a problem, Bryan. But from your point of view, you have a much more experienced point of view than I in the art world, and you see this as an issue that you would like to help solve. All right, you have my support, Bryan. You have
Yeah,
when you do
appreciate
it like
it.
that. I'm a business person, so when I hear 14,000 things go down to 300, I'm like, why? Why is that happening? But then you explained why that needs to happen, in your opinion, why that is something that it would help the sandbox and not hurt it, and that convinces me.
That's nice. Well, I'm sure to try to. I don't know if we can update the draft as it is. I might change a few wording from the feedbacks here and there, but
You should be able
I
to,
guess that
yeah.
is it.
You should
Okay.
be able to like reach out to the Geraldine and Cyril and
Because she's the
let
one
them
that
know
posted it.
that
Yeah.
based
Mm.
on what you've recently learned, I would like to change it to this because it more clearly communicates. And you should mention that if you agree with me that if the way it's described right now doesn't really explain what it is you're asking for in the same way that when I first read it, I thought you were accepting like I thought you were talking about the DAO collection and like you were approving the DAO collection, and I wasn't sure, but now I get it.
Okay. Yeah, because
I
it's
didn't
something that
know.
people
I
didn't
didn't
heard
know.
of. So yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But
Right
yeah,
now it
if you
makes it
could share
looks like
a few, if you could share a few of your notes, so I can just
yeah, I sure will. I'll
notes from
respond
them.
back in that discourse
Perfect.
forum and make it really clear what it is that I
Yeah.
recommend. It's just my
Yeah.
opinion though.
No,
So,
no, but because you're right. A title is the first. People stop. Most I know most people are just gonna read the title. So
right, they're
it's
gonna read the
important that
title
it
and they're
is
gonna
as.
think mandate. That's a weird word. DAO
Mm,
collection management. I don't know what that means. Collection management of what? And then they go in, they read NFTs, they read artwork, they read 30,000 pounds, they read a 90-day plan, something about 14,000 assets, and most of them are profile pictures. But most of us know that Bored Ape Yacht Club is worth a lot of money, so why would you trade that sort of stuff? Not
mm,
realizing that 14,000 profile pictures doesn't mean 14,000 Bored Ape Yacht Clubs. It means a bunch of little stuff worth less than zero point 0.1 ETH, and how you'd like to consolidate that to build a theme that says something about the Sandbox collection. That
mm.
makes sense. That makes sense to me. So,
No,
anyways,
definitely, you're right. That was our main worry, and a lot of it goes down to the fact that we didn't have much time to work on that.
yeah.
So we
Well,
wanted to push it for some reason. We wanted to push it as soon as possible because it's gonna end anyway, the 31 of December.
mhm,
I don't know why. For some reason, they wanted to do it for, I guess, compatibility issue from 1st January to 31 of December. So even if I wanted to and say, oh, let's do it for a year from now, from September to next September, I was not able to. So we wanted to push that as soon as possible so we can have at least a full quarter to dedicate to it. So in that regard, we
gotcha.
had to push it as soon as possible because there's 2 week voting process, 2 weeks there, and so we're coming up September very fast.
Okay.
So
Makes
that's
sense.
one of the reasons.
Well, Bryan, Merci beaucoup.
Je
That
t'en
was
prie.
that was really, really fun and interesting to talk to you, learn about your past and Grida's role and what your plan is for the curation of the Sandbox's 14,000 artwork collection into something that makes sense for the Sandbox and helps us become the cultural capital of the metaverse, which is what Seb has been saying this whole time. So
Mm.
understood. Thank you. Um, yeah, I have a lot of future episodes coming up. I think the next one are going to be another reveal with Pepe from the Magic Palette. So we're going to actually use the Magic Palette to create in Game Maker. So that's cool. That's coming up soon, and I'll try and talk with Cyril about the Sandbox Foundation and how it's run and the DAO and all of that. Arthemort, Bryan, thank you again, and I really appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you, Lanzer. Thank you for that and being involved. And we need people as much as involved to you as you are to make
Hey, I
DAOs
love
really
it.
happen and be successful. So yeah, thank you, and thanks for providing me a platform, talk about
Yep,
the project and making me up and all that.
absolutely. Au revoir.
Au revoir, bye bye, ciao.